The night I hired an escort for a charity gala, I thought the worst thing that could happen was a few awkward glances, or a moment of discomfort. The chandeliers were blazing, the room echoed with polished chatter, and my heart carried the kind of quiet ache that no amount of success could cover. Then, amid the swirl of gowns and tuxedos, she leaned in closer than the soft music, and whispered a simple truth about herself that made the entire evening tilt. A gentle admission about her age that forced me to confront everything I thought I knew about assumptions, empathy, and what it really means to see someone. My name is Thomas Whitaker, and I live in Boston, Massachusetts, a city steeped in history, where tradition meets expectation, and people are often measured by how perfectly they fit the mold. I worked as a mid-level executive at a biomedical company. From the outside it looked like I had it all together: steady career, nice apartment overlooking the harbor, the right invitations to the right events. But inside, 3 years after losing my wife Margaret to a sudden illness, I was still learning how to breathe in rooms filled with couples holding hands and sharing knowing smiles. The invitation to the Children's Hope Foundation Gala came in elegant script, with that understated line encouraging attendees to bring a companion. I couldn't bear another night of pitying looks or careful questions about whether I was seeing anyone. So I made a decision that felt practical, even clinical at the time. I contacted a high-end agency known for discretion, professionalism, and strict boundaries. Nothing more than a companion for the evening, no expectations, no complications. Her profile listed her as Grace Sullivan, poised, well-spoken, 22 years old. The age jumped out at me immediately. Young enough to raise eyebrows, old enough to be fully responsible for her choices. I told myself it was fine, that the world would assume what it wanted anyway, but the unease lingered like a shadow. When she arrived at my apartment to get ready, the contrast was immediate and striking. She wore a midnight blue gown that caught the light like still water at dusk, and she moved with a quiet assurance that spoke of someone who had already faced more than her share of life's sharper edges. There was no overt charm or practiced seduction, just a calm, respectful warmth that put me at ease without trying. The gala was held in a grand ballroom facing the Charles River, where crystal light fixtures glittered like frozen stars and the air smelled of expensive cologne and good intentions. As we stepped inside, I felt my shoulders tense in that familiar way. But Grace walked beside me with natural grace, her arm lightly linked with mine, her presence steadying me in a way I hadn't anticipated. She listened attentively to the conversations around us, offered thoughtful comments, and laughed in moments that called for it, making me feel less like a widower on display, and more like someone who belonged. I noticed how people watched her, not always kindly. Curiosity mixed with quick judgments flickered across faces. I could almost hear the unspoken narratives: older man seeking youth, young woman seeking opportunity. The weight of those assumptions pressed down harder than my cufflinks. Midway through the evening, as the orchestra shifted to a slower melody and the crowd's energy softened, she leaned in. Her voice was low, almost hesitant, carrying a tremor that caught me off guard. She spoke about her age, not as a defense, but as a quiet question, whether it would change how I saw her, whether it would dim the respect she had felt growing between us that night. The words landed like a stone in still water. This wasn't about legality or optics. It was about her humanity, her worth beyond the role she was playing. In that moment, I saw how often people in her position are reduced to stereotypes, to quick labels that erase entire lives. And here I was, the one who had hired her to avoid being judged, now facing my own quick judgments staring back at me. Memories of Margaret flooded in, her fierce belief in second chances, her way of seeing the hidden struggles in everyone. Grace had shared earlier, casually, without self-pity, that she was taking night classes toward a degree, that she sent money home to her mother in Ohio, a woman named Ruth who worked endless shifts caring for others. After that exchange, the night transformed. I stopped scanning the room for approval and started truly seeing the person next to me. When I introduced her, it was with genuine pride, not as an accessory, but as someone whose company mattered. When people asked about my life, I answered openly: my grief, my loneliness, my reason for supporting the foundation. Grace's posture eased, her smile softened, less guarded. Later, a prominent board member, Harold Bennett, offered one of those barbed, humorous remarks laced with condescension. Anger flared in me, but before I could speak, Grace deflected it effortlessly, redirecting the conversation to the children's stories the foundation served. The man blinked, caught off balance by her quiet dignity, and I felt a deep shift inside myself. Respect overpowered the old fear. By the time the final applause rose for the record-breaking donations, something in me had loosened. For the first time in years, I felt part of something bigger than my own sorrow. Healing, I realized, doesn't always arrive in dramatic revelations or new romances. Sometimes it comes in the simple act of standing beside another person, choosing to see them fully and extending the same grace we all quietly hope for. As the evening wound down, we stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights shimmering on the river like scattered hopes. We walked in comfortable silence, no roles to play, just two people who had shared a vulnerable evening. I drove her home, the quiet between us thoughtful rather than strained. I paid her what was agreed, thanked her sincerely, and watched her disappear into the building, knowing the true exchange had been something far more valuable than money. It was mutual recognition, freely offered, and received. In the weeks that followed, I carried that night with me. I began volunteering more with the foundation, working with young people transitioning out of foster care. I spoke more openly about loss and the courage it takes to ask for connection. I even returned to my faith community, reminded that love is shown through actions, not judgments. Grace sent a short handwritten note sometime later, simple words of thanks for treating her with respect. I keep it tucked in my desk, a small reminder that every meeting holds the power to reshape us, if we allow it. That night taught me that redemption rarely comes in sweeping gestures. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in a navy gown beneath glittering lights, asking a simple question about age and acceptance. It arrives when we choose to look beyond the surface, past the labels, and see the human heart standing right in front of us. If this story has stirred something in you, if it has reminded you that compassion can bridge even the widest divides, then let it linger. Kindness, given without condition, has a way of changing lives in the quietest, most powerful ways.